Pleased that you are all here. You are the core class of 2022. Woo! So there are 580 of you, and I think almost everybody is here. We have a program tonight that has become a tradition. It's called the Core Keynote, and a keynote address centers on the most important themes of a conference or an event, and that's what we're doing tonight. We're focusing on empathy and dialogue, the themes of Core 110. And before we get started, I have a couple of kind of housekeeping things. One is that I would like you to please turn off and put away all of your devices. We'll take a page from Sherry Turkle. I know you guys have been reading Turkle. And let's make this a device-free hour. All right. Question down here. I would prefer that you put them away and just absorb and listen. Okay, thank you. Another bit of housekeeping is just a few thank yous. I want to thank VUTV for being here and making a recording. IMC for taking photos. The Hari Union for hosting us, and also dining services, and also the College of Arts and Sciences. All right, so before we have our main event, which is the keynote address, I have a few special guests. The first one you have seen before, but he's here to welcome you, the president of Valparaiso University, Jose Padilla.
Thank you, Doctor. All right, now, quiet. Welcome, Core. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's the end of the day. It's been a long day for me, probably a long day for you, and you're kind of giddy and tired and all in the same time. But I'm just so happy to be here with you. I know I spoke to many of you at the convocation. Some of you decided not to go, and I know who you are, and I'll track you down. But I'm so happy to be with you here tonight because I think CORE symbolizes and captures everything that we want a Beacon student to understand. Take a look to the right of you. Take a look to the left of you. Behind you, in front of you. What you see, what I believe you see, are your brothers and sisters. And like brothers and sisters in any kind of family, like any kind of brothers and sisters, you're going to not always agree with each other. You're going to argue. You're going to be different from each other. And just by looking around this room, what I love about this room is its diversity. But the one thing about brothers and sisters, despite how many arguments you have, how many disagreements you have, deep down inside you love each other. And you have each other's back. I pity anyone outside of this university who has to compete against a Valpo student, because you're special. You would not have been accepted to this institution if there were strengths and character that you bring to the table. You're the kind of students that we want to have. It's kind of a burden in a way, because even as freshmen, we expect a lot out of you. You may have heard me say at convocation, I don't care what kind of fish you were, what kind of pond you were in, it's a clean slate. It's a clean slate. We're going to make you break a sweat. It's not going to be easy. But we wouldn't have accepted you into this institution if we didn't think you were up to the challenge. I know each and every one of you are up to the challenge. There are a lot of folks who tried to get in this school couldn't get into it, but you got into it because you're special and you're unique, and you don't know it yet. You have no idea of what you're capable of doing. You have no idea what kind of leaders you're going to be. We not only produce college graduates here, we produce servant leaders who will impact not only their neighborhoods, their communities, their states, and I have to say, your country. I went to a reunion of our alums in Washington, D.C. in the spring. Had 75 alums show up who worked on Capitol Hill in the Congress, in federal agencies, in powerful non-for-profits. Those are your predecessors. They were like you at one point, sitting here in this big core class. They were just like you at one point. Just like you in the sense of wondering whether or not what you're capable of doing, wondering if you belong here, wondering if you're up to the challenge. But they persevered, and you will too. Now, as brothers and sisters, you're going to be talking today about empathy and friendship and dialogue. Friendship doesn't always come right away. You can't force friendship. It may be hard to learn what it is to empathize. But if you don't have it now, you can learn it here in a core class where you're dealing with folks who are not in your majors, don't live in the same dorms, don't look like you, don't think like you, and that's the wonder of core, because we bring you all together, and I hope you enjoy this opportunity. Because after this class, after this program, you're going to get in your majors, you're going to get in your own little lanes, and it's going to be hard for you to interact with each other, and that's unfortunate. Core is the opportunity for you to develop friendships across the aisle, where an engineer can become best friends with a nursing student, where an English student hangs out with a business major, where somebody from the city of Chicago becomes really good friends from somebody from rural Indiana. That's what's so special about Core. That's what's so special about Valpo men and women, that you come here and you develop these kind of friendships. But it'll happen over time. Just give it a shot. One thing I want to ask you to do, by the way. How many of you live in the dorms? So you eat at Founders, right? Now, let's put aside whether the food's good or bad. It's dorm food, okay? It's college food. But do yourself a favor. In addition to Core, reach out to folks in Founders. You and I both know it's just natural. You're going to sit with your friends, and you're going to get into that groove, and you're not going to sit with anybody else. You'll see the football players, and they're one part of the room. You'll see the basketball players, the baseball players, the musicians, Christ College, whatever it might be. And I get it. It's comfortable. It's easy. But I hope that you, over time, realize how important it is to sit with somebody who may just be eating alone every day. And sit with that person. That's empathy. Or to sit with somebody else, for a football player to go sit with somebody in Christ College and have a dialogue with somebody who's different from you. Because I will tell you this right now. Once you leave this place in 4 years, you're not going to be in this center of gravity where you have this opportunity to actually be in kind of like a laboratory in a way, where you're stuck together. And I'm so glad you are, though, because it's going to teach you, once you graduate from here, how to reach out to people who are different from you, how to understand them, and to have arguments with them, civil arguments with them, that won't burn bridges. Now, you and I both, I don't know if you watch the news. I'm a news junkie. and I worked in politics in Washington, D.C., and I'm a Democrat. Back in those days, Republicans and Democrats still fought pretty hard, but at the end of the day, we could still go out and have a beer with each other. Nowadays, if you watch MSNBC or CNN or Fox News, that doesn't happen as much. Somehow, my generation didn't meet the challenge of bringing people together. My hope is that you can bring people together. You can be what I call, or what's in the Bible called being repairers of the breach, where you have people going off into the respective corners and not having the courage to try to come together. I want you to use Core as an opportunity to learn and exercise that muscle. I want you to continue to practice this over the course of your 4 years, because I'm telling you right now, our country is depending on you. And you may think, what, I'm a nursing major, I'm a finance major, I mean, our country's depending on me. It's depending on you and every one of you, and if you bring all that together collectively, you can help change this country. Just like those 75 alums in Washington, D.C. You may not think you're capable of doing that. Like I said before, those 75 didn't think they were capable of doing it, but they're doing it now. I believe in you. I believe in each and every one of you. So I hope you work hard at what I call the leadership muscle. You think right now you're here just learning calculus or English or chemistry or biology, and there's so much more you're learning right now. And one of the things you have to work at is that leadership muscle. And leadership muscle means bringing people together and inspiring people, encouraging people, not bringing them down, trying to understand where they come from. That's where empathy comes into place. Trying to engage in dialogues. And hopefully, if you work at it hard enough, you'll develop friendships that you will never lose. You don't know this right now, but the people who probably you are friends with right now in these first couple weeks, you will be friends with for the rest of your lives. When you're 60 years old, you may not even see each other. You may not even see each other for 40 years, and you'll see each other in a corner, and it'll be like no time has passed because of the friendships you form here. I'm not done talking. Thank you. So, I won't take any more of your time, but I just want to let you know you're going to see me from time to time. I hope you don't avoid me. I don't want you to duck your heads. Oh, God, here comes the old guy. Oh, my God, here comes the old guy. I hope you talk to me and tell me what you're feeling, how things are going. Because even though we're going to make you work hard, I hope you understand that we're here for you. We're going to give you a lot more rope because you're adults. Mama and Papa Bear aren't here. You're going to have to make your own decisions for yourselves. But even though that's the case, there's no embarrassment. There's no dishonor in reaching out and asking for help. We've all been through that. I have. Faculty here have. Not a sign of embarrassment to ask for help. We're only one phone call away because sometimes it may be hard to talk to your roommate or to your friends about certain issues, or even mom and dad. We're here for you because you're family now. And you don't know this, but you're going to be family. I consider you family for the rest of your lives. And we have a vested interest in your success. That may sound awfully dramatic right now for freshman students from wherever you are, but I'm telling you, in the big scheme of things, we're attached to the hip for the rest of your lives because you're my brothers and you're my sisters. And I hope you see each other that way as well. So God love you. I love you too. And I'll be seeing you guys around.
Thank you so much, President Padilla. Just fantastic. We have another special guest here who has something to do with the bookmark that you picked up on your way in. We have started a new tradition where one of the freshman core students at the end of the year designs the bookmark for the next year's class. And I'm very pleased to call up to the stage the winner of this year's design contest for the bookmark, Julia Muscat.
Hi guys, so I'm Julia and I'm a second year student and I was in your guys' shoes just last year, so don't be scared. I know the first week at school is a little much. You might be thinking, what did I get myself into? But it's gonna get better. You're gonna get closer with the people around you and you're actually gonna have a lot of fun. So the reason I'm here is because I designed this bookmark, and the 3 words I chose to put on here are empathy, friendship, and dialogue. And these weren't just 3 words that sounded nice or fluffy. They're the 3 key attributes that we really discuss a lot in your first year of core. And they're important not only for your first year here at Valpo, but also just to have as skills in your life moving forward. I mean, it's all about how you can bond with others, become a better friend. And so these 3 images and these 3 words were things that I thought represented being a good friend, being a good citizen, and being a good team member. And you're gonna be discussing it over and over again this year, and really your whole time here at Valpo, because they're important skills to have. You're going to be with people in every single class, every single day. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but something that was a little bit of a transition for me coming to college was you are around people all day long, and you're not leaving your friends at the end of the night. You live with them. They're down the hallway. And if you can't get along with others, or you're not sure how to express your feelings or how to work with others on a team, then you're not going to be able to be successful here. And everyone here wants you to be successful, all your professors, all the administrators. That's the whole goal. And core is a great class to be in, whether or not you're thinking that right now, because you're building these skills and you're also getting to have an opportunity to be a freshman class as a whole. Every single person in core is kind of experiencing the same things, and so sometimes you can get a little bit of imposter syndrome when you're here, and just knowing that all of you are in the same course is a little bit of comfort because you're all experiencing the same things. So I just really encourage you guys all to think about empathy, dialogue, and friendship as things not to dread talking about in class each week, but actually to better yourself as a friend, as a team member, and as a Valpo student. Another reason that I'm here is kind of to have a shameless plug for the Writing Center. So I'm a Writing Center consultant, and I'm sure you guys have heard about the Writing Center, but I know almost 0 of you have come because we just opened today. And so the Writing Center is a great opportunity, especially as a freshman. You're not really sure what to expect from your professors, or you're confused by your essay prompts, and core has a lot of writing that comes with it. And so take advantage of the Writing Center. We're here to help you, whether that means help you just generate ideas and brainstorm. You can come to us for literally any piece of writing. It doesn't need to be a big essay. We had someone come in today who just wanted to go over their reading reflection. And so it can be any piece of writing. If you're not confident in your writing and you just need someone to bounce ideas off of, we're here for you. But what we're not going to do is do your work for you. So we're here to collaborate with you. We're here to build friendship, build dialogue. And sometimes if you're just feeling scared and you need someone to talk to, it's a great sounding board to come to the Writing Center. So with that, I was going to introduce the director of the Writing Center, Miss Julie Alt. And yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Julia. So if you're sort of creative, you might be thinking about doing the bookmark competition at the end of the spring. So kind of keep that in your mind. And thank you, Julie, also for being here. Okay, so we're getting on to our main event, and we have 2 speakers. Their talk is entitled, Pull Up a Chair and Dare to Listen. Allison Schutte is one of the speakers. She teaches in the English department and has been co-directing the Welcome Project since 2010. Christina Hearn is our other speaker. She directs the Access and Accommodations Resource Center and has been contributing to the Welcome Project since she was a student here in 2012. Together, the two of them have presented nationally at academic conferences and regionally at community workshops. For both, the work at the heart of the Welcome Project, facilitated conversation and social justice activism inform their personal and professional lives more broadly. Please help me in welcoming Allison, Schutte, and Christina Hearn.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, so tonight is not quite a traditional lecture, just so you know. So we're going to start with a brief history of the Welcome Project, so you have some context. The heart of this project is listening, and we'll be sharing some stories with you, to be specific, that will invite you to think more deeply and to listen closely to how students here before you have both experienced belonging and not belonging on our campus. The Welcome Project began in 2010. Liz Werfel, who was a professor in the art department, wanted to start asking members of our campus community this particular question: when do you feel like you belong and when do you feel like you don't belong? It was at a time in the university's history where we were becoming a much more diverse student, faculty, and staff body. And the question of how are we going to live well together when there's more difference among us became something we were really interested in exploring in this first-person kind of way. So all of the stories that you hear or that you would find on our webpage, they're all first-person stories. They come out of interviews that are anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half long. These questions about belonging might feel extremely relevant to you now. You've been here only a week. When do you feel like you belong on this campus, and when do you feel like you don't belong? So I wanted you to take a moment, if you have a pen with you, the handouts that you have, there's two sort of prompts right at the beginning here that we just wanted to ask you to take a minute to think about a time when you felt like you belonged. So you might be pulling back into your childhood. You might think about your neighborhood growing up. You might think about your families. You might not even be needing to think about people. Maybe there are places where you felt like you belonged. And as you think about that experience of belonging, what stands out the most to you? You can just write that down on the handout. Similarly, we want you to think about a time when you felt like you didn't belong. And when you go back into your memory for that time, what sticks with you from that experience? What stands out? So both of these prompts are designed to give you a point of comparison so that when we play the storytellers later, you can compare and contrast your own experience with those of our storytellers, because everyone's coming into this campus from a different place, and so there won't necessarily always be similarities. So since 2010, nearly 190 students and 90 faculty, staff, and community members have created the Welcome Project. It's not the work of just a few people. This is definitely a collaborative effort. And our website is home to over 400 stories now. We've interviewed over 380 people in the last 12 years. They fall into 3 initiatives. We have the campus collection. You're going to be hearing stories from that initiative tonight. We also have the Invisible Project initiative, whose stories challenge our assumptions about what homelessness looks like here in Porter County. And then we have the Flight Paths initiative, whose stories challenge our assumptions about what it means to be a good neighbor across city and county lines here in the region of Northwest Indiana. Those stories specifically challenge stereotypes that people have of Gary, Indiana, and we do that by recalling the history of the civil rights movement here in Northwest Indiana, as well as the history of disinvestment that has been the result of white flight and deindustrialization. And as I mentioned earlier, listening is at the heart of this project in these interviews that we do. So Christina is going to talk a little bit about that quality of listening that is at the heart of the project.
So as Allison, hopefully you can hear me, as Allison talked about, so when we think about the Welcome Project and when we started really working, well, they started their work on the Welcome Project, I came in later. So much of what we do in the heart of that work is being grounded in the idea of listening. And when we think about listening, there's quotes that say listening is the greatest and the biggest gift of kindness. And so one of the things that as you're listening to stories and as you're in this community, or as we've kind of titled this presentation because it's less of a lecture, pulling up a chair to think about other people, we want you to think about the context and where they come from. Right? So each of us in this room bring into this space various social identities, whether it be your race, your ethnicity, your gender identity, your sexual orientation, your social economic status, your abilities. There are so many different things that we bring into that space. And oftentimes we all grow up in what I call this rule book. And this rule book is the things that we've been socialized into thinking about from family members, from our communities. And this is how we see people maybe who don't look like us. This is these ideas that we have. And oftentimes we have this singular narrative or story about people. And so some of the work in the Welcome Project and what our goal is, and what my goal and my hope is for you, is that as you start listening to other people, as you actively listen to their stories, and so when I say actively listen, we're listening to understand, not just to kind of respond, that you will spend time getting to listen and hear what people are, not only what they're saying, but you see people as human. So often we have this single narrative, again, of people, and we start to dehumanize people under this context of like, oh, this person or this group fits here. And so we don't see their humanity. We don't listen. And because of that lack of understanding of people's humanity, when we don't understand people or when we don't agree with people, we just shut off. Listening allows us to hear people, allows us to see people, and to once again remember that people are human. We come from different places, but that does not mean that we're not all due dignity, worth, integrity, and respect.
So tonight we're going to give you the opportunity to dare to listen. Can you tune into our storytellers? Can you listen for what's important to them before you start to agree or disagree with the experiences that they present to us? So you'll want to have a pen handy if you do, because you can jot things down, as the 2 stories will be about 5 minutes each. And some things might jump out at you that you want to note. And we also have some questions for you for each of the stories that we'll use for self-reflection. So the first story is a student from Bronzeville who chooses to attend Valparaiso University because she senses that people will know her name here. And then she refers directly to her core class and a time when she initiated a conversation about race, and then talks about how that goes. So this is the first story.
Because I grew up in the Bronzeville area, we didn't know anything about the country. We didn't know anything about Valparaiso, Indiana. The only thing that I knew from Indiana was maybe like Terre Haute or Crown Point, but not a small place like Valparaiso. What is a Valparaiso? Even where I'm from, people I'll say, oh yeah, I go to Valparaiso University, and they're like, what? But I didn't hear about Valparaiso until the city and the university until I was a junior in high school. They were like, we're going on a college trip and we're going to Valparaiso. And I'm like, I'm not going there. That sounds weird. Just the name itself sounds weird. I'm like, it's probably going to be weird people. It's not going to be people that look like me. And I guess I was scared, because of that sense. I saw the campus and I saw how people treated each other. And I saw the way that people just interact with each other. And I was like, yeah, this is the place where I wanted to be. Even though everything looked different, no sidewalks. It's quiet. People look different. For me, from where I grew up, even though I was just like, no, I need to be here. I feel like I can grow here. I feel like people can know my name here. I see people who have challenges. My roommate is also African American, and we have different perspectives. She's like, man, it's all of these white people around, and I'm just like, I love it. I love it. I love being different, seeing different things. And she's like, I don't know, I'm not used to it, but I feel like it's something that you have to grow into. I feel that it's something that you have to be comfortable with being yourself and wearing your hair like this, and just it's yourself. It's your person that's going to make you be different. In core class, actually, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about race, and so everyone, you can tell the whole room just went flat, and I was like, hey, what's wrong with everyone? Let's talk about it. I am African American. Everybody who I'm sitting next to is white, but I feel that that's why a lot of people like me, because I'm not the person that sweeps it under the rug. If we're going to live with each other, if we're going to communicate with each other, be in school with each other, have close relationships, let's talk about it. Let's not, our skin is different. Let's talk about it. Let's not throw it under the rug. We were reading Gig, and we read about the anchor woman, and she's an African American, and she was saying how her mom was really strong, a strong black woman, and being an anchor woman and you're black, it's not really, she was talking about that struggle, and so I was just like, I felt like it was the best time to bring up race. I don't know why. I just felt like, so I'm like, what do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of me being in this class? I was asking how do you feel about seeing more black people on campus and stuff. I was asking those type of questions, and they were just like, well, and even my friends who I thought that was really outspoken, they were still they didn't want to talk about it. The room was completely silent, and people didn't make eye contact. So I brought up that point. I said, well, why did everyone, I'm that type of person. So I asked, I'm like, hey, so why did everyone get quiet? I mentioned to them, I was like, yeah, the room just got flat, guys. Hello, are we still in class? And they were just like, well, one girl finally said well, it's kind of hard it's kind of we're thinking about what to say that it won't be offensive to you. I guess I was the elephant in the room. Didn't even know it. No, I'm kidding. I totally knew it. I knew it, but I felt like it was time to break it. It was time to break that wall. Once I told them that I was open with questions, and once I told them that it's okay, to ask different questions, because I want to ask questions about you too. You can ask questions about me, I can ask questions about you. And once I kind of broke down that wall, we became a closer core class.
Okay, so there are a few prompts. Like I said, some of you are already starting to write your notes down. And again, we wanted to give you a point of reference. Christina and I are going to share some of the things that we notice about what this storyteller cares about in a minute. But we wanted to have you write down some of your thoughts so you can compare and contrast and see if you're noticing the same things that we are, or if your experience is pointing out entirely different things. So why does the storyteller feel like she needs to be here on this campus? How is her roommate's experience different from her own? In which situations do you feel like the storyteller, and when do you feel like her roommate? And why does the storyteller's class go quiet? Would you want to be in a classroom where someone breaks the wall? So just taking a minute to note your thoughts there.
And I can hear that you're still unpacking, but for the interest of time and being respectful of the time that we had allotted, we want to kind of just come in as a bigger group. And so, Allison, as you played this video, what things stood out for you? Like what came to mind for you?
So I was really impressed with the fact that the storyteller could recognize her initial assumptions about Valparaiso, that it was going to be this weird place where people were going to look weird and be weird, and there was no way that she was going to go here. But somehow those assumptions didn't stop her when she got here from recognizing, like, oh, there might be actually a place for me here. So I thought it was important to name that, like, when we're unfamiliar with something, we can immediately have this, like, no way reaction, but that doesn't have to be the final word for us. So that part really stood out to me. Do you have things that stood out for you?
I mean, so I think similar, but I think part of that is that this is my experience in some ways, right? So didn't grow up in Bronzeville. I grew up in Gary, Indiana. And so I did my first year on Valpo, at Valpo would have been 2011. And so one of those things for me is like, from Gary, everybody pretty much looks like me. And then I got here, and I was like, oh, all right, that's cool. But it was different, right? It was different, and it was just an experience, right, to have to try to integrate into that. But I also think one of the things moving past that, when the speaker talks about trying to figure out who you are, right, in the context of, like, the speaker says it's going to be your characteristics that kind of determine who you are and where you fit, and you kind of have to make it your own. And so tell me a little bit about how that comes out for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's parts of what this speaker is able to do that I admire. Like, I sense that she has a lot of confidence and self-awareness, and I don't always feel that. So it's kind of cool to hear somebody who goes into a room and does feel different and sees that as, like, exciting, because that, like I said, that doesn't always feel that way for me. So I appreciate that. But I also was interested in what she noticed about her roommate, and I wish we had the roommate in the room to also share her story, because I feel like that's an equally valid experience of difference.
Yeah, and so I think one of the things, as we're thinking about just collectively as this concept of empathy and dialogue, that people come into situations get from different contexts. And so while one person may be able to jump forward, another person, it may take them some time. And that's kind of based on, there's this concept of social location, right, that talks about your identities and how you feel like you present based upon the environment that you're in. And so for some people, that may be harder. And I think that there's no right or wrong way to belong, and also realizing that as we're understanding, as we're listening to people, it's important for us not to say, like, oh, well, I think one of the narratives that we'll sometimes give people is that you need to, you don't belong because you don't want to belong, or you're not trying to take that step. And so whatever your identities are, being willing to say, like, okay, X, Y, and Z thing, because of this identity, I may not feel like I belong, right? And being okay with that, and not feeling like you need to change that. And the other concept is for people that we shift, right? For some of us, we shift in situations, and the concept of shifting is this idea that based upon where you are, you shift in order to fit that environment. And so sometimes we will, not going to use the academic terms, like sometimes people will be like, you're, being fake. You're not keeping it 100 because, or you capping, right? Like, because this idea that you just really not being who you are. But some of that is like, can you feel like you can do that in a room where people don't look like you, or in a room where you just may not feel like your authentic self?
Yeah, and I definitely feel like there are times when, for me, I need to go find people who do look like me or who are whatever specific category I might be feeling alienated from in order to get the support and then the resources I need to maybe go outside my comfort zone. And I think the next storyteller we have will kind of illustrate that a little bit too. So should we go ahead and move to that? Okay. So our second storyteller is it's okay to be poor, and she's a student who discusses growing up poor and the values she learned from her family through that experience. And she also shares how she feels judged when she's on campus for coming from that background. Again, for this one, have your pens and pencils ready, and you can flip to the other side, I think, of the handout if you haven't already, for the questions that relate to this storyteller.
Sure, I was mad when I was a kid when I didn't get what I wanted, when I didn't understand that we didn't have any money. But as time has went on, as I've gotten older and I've understood that sometimes the bills go unpaid, sometimes this can't just happen. Like, I really appreciate what my family has done. My mom and dad made sure everybody was fed. Even though they didn't help put groceries in the house, they made sure every single kid was fed, even if there wasn't enough left for them afterward. Or like when our electricity, or no, it was our gas bill didn't go paid, they boiled pots of water on the stove so that we could take baths still. They worked so hard in their lives to make sure that we had exactly what we needed, to the point that we had to go to pack a backpack one year, or like my mom will ask for help from other families just so that we have what we needed. And I know that really hurts them. I can't be mad at them. I can't be mad at them for not having money. But my first impression when I moved onto campus and I was seeing everybody's stuff and I was seeing how these people were interacting was that a lot of these people are really pretentious and rude and snobby. Like, there are quite a few nice ones, but like a lot of people are just really rude. Like, I had to start a job immediately when I came here, and the more hours I worked, the more I noticed that people would stray away, because I worked at Founders, and like the more I worked and the more people saw me there, I saw the more people that would just be like, oh, well, we're not going to invite her to places because she's going to have to work. And they would say it really condescendingly. And I had this entire friend group when I first got here that because I couldn't go out with them, I couldn't play basketball with them, or I couldn't go wherever they wanted to go because I had to have a job and none of them did. They just stopped talking to me. They stopped being my friend. And last year, second semester, I had 6 jobs. I was never not working. And that really intimidated people. It just seems really rude because we're a campus of like diversity and equality, and I may not be a different race, I may not be of a different ethnic background, but I'm from a different socioeconomic background, and that seems to be what makes me different because I don't have new clothes still. It's just like high school all over again. Like, I don't have the new clothes, I can't go out, I can't participate in extracurriculars because I'm always at work. I don't feel like I fit in here. I don't feel like I belong. There'd have to be a community, like, because there's other communities on campus, like we have our live community, our LGBTQ community. There'd have to be like a lower socioeconomic community, but a lot of people don't want to say that that's where they're from. Everyone's really ashamed of it, basically. It's not something that you want everyone to know because it's not something to be proud of. I'm not ashamed of it because it made me a better person. It made me a better person in a lot of ways because without money, you're not focused on what you can have, but it's what you do have. Like family, trust, honesty, relationships, friendships. Because if you're just hanging out watching a movie because you can't do anything else, like, you can better communicate with your friends. You're better at relationships because they know you're going through hard times. And not only that, it made my family stronger. It made me know better. I'm a lot better with money. I'm really good with credit. I'm really good with not spending money when I don't have to. But other people might not see it that way because you hear, oh, it's the poverty class, they just didn't work hard enough. They're just not doing enough. But if you start off at the bottom, you're most likely, there's a 73% chance you're going to stay at the bottom. It's okay. It's okay to be poor. It's okay to have lived your life on welfare. It's okay to not feel welcome. It's perfectly okay.
So again,
you don't
giving
have to
you
be
just a
ashamed
minute
of it.
here
You don't have
to note some of your
be
own
ashamed
thoughts
of
on the
your friends
handout.
thinking that being poor is bad, because it's not. It's not a life choice. Being poor is just a life circumstance.
And keeping in mind that you notice different things about this story, I'm going to start by asking Christina this time. What stood out to you from this story and what seems important to the storyteller?
Yeah, I think, sorry, have to get used to standing in front of mics. One of the things I think for me as we're listening to this is the storyteller talks about all of the work like that their parents did. Sometimes when we think about poverty, we're like, oh, people are, like the storyteller talks about, is being lazy. And so this speaker finds a way to say, like, but they did all of these things to try to circumvent the circumstance. But I think the other part at the core when we're thinking about dialogue is that they were okay. They had this ability to be okay with not feeling welcome, not feeling included or like they belonged in a place. And I think that that's such, I think that that's a liberating act, but I also think that it's an act of resistance in some ways. And so as someone who's really deeply rooted in root social work and rooted in like social justice, like there's this paradigm that we expect people to live in and to live by. And so this idea that like, these are my identities and I'm okay with uplifting my identities and feeling like, instead of feeling like I need to shift towards another identity in order to be in this place. So what things stood out to you, Allison?
Yeah, no, I like that. I appreciate that. I feel like I sense a very strong resilience and spirit in this storyteller too. It feels like a different kind of confidence. Someone who has, from their experience, been able to find a way to stand on her own 2 feet or their own 2 feet. At the same time, this story, I don't sense the storyteller asking for anything. She's just claiming her experience and noting the kinds of strengths that she's found in her family and in her own resilience. But I hear it as a faculty member on this campus, and I feel like we ought to be doing something that can change the climate of campus or the climate of a classroom so that this kind of community that the storyteller seeks is something that they could find. And I think that it's important to recognize that it's not always up to the individual, as you were noticing from our first storyteller, very much thinking about how that first storyteller felt empowered themselves. I think that what we notice from this story is that sometimes it needs to be collective action by other people who change a situation so that more people feel like they can show up in their full humanity.
Yeah. So I think kind of segue into that this realization that empathy starts with conversation. But empathy, in order to make true change, can't stay there. That empathy and just listening does not change the dynamics of social and systematic injustices that so many different people, given your different identities, are facing, right? So we all have varying identities, and some in which we have privilege, some in which we don't. And that idea that we need to work together to address them, but it first starts in listening. As we're thinking through that, though, I think one of the things that we've talked about is like the different these speakers both had different social identities. Again, social identities being those social groups you fall into, and kind of those characteristics people ascribe to you, right? But I'm wondering, as we're thinking through that, for you to kind of think about a time and place, and we don't have a lot of time, and I know we want to do question and answer. I wonder if they could just like talk to a neighbor, maybe?
Sure, do.
Yeah, okay. So, and you might not know the person sitting next to you, but thinking about, for you, what does it mean to feel welcomed in a space? Like, what would be needed on this campus for you to feel welcomed? And then thinking about, are there times when maybe you, thinking about your social identities too, like what things are you eager to bring to the table of Valparaiso? What things do you readily show? What things do you sometimes maybe not, like don't show off right away, like who you are, for the purpose of feeling like it may not be comfortable? So just talk to somebody next to you briefly. Sorry, I was trying to read this and look.
Yeah. It's okay. I'm just going to go back up here and cap it off, and then I'll turn to Lisa to see if she wants to do any.
Because I know, I was like, it was the hard part. I was looking, I'm like, oh, they have 5 minutes, so I need to,
It's all good. Let me interrupt your conversations. I hope this means that they are so good you can't tear yourself away. So I hope for you all that these questions posed tonight are the beginning of inquiry for you. They're not questions that have single answers. They're not questions that come to conclusions. And I've taught in the fall of Core before, and I've always been curious about this question of, we value empathy so highly, we hold it up. But where does it, is it enough? And I think one of the things that we've learned from working on the Welcome Project is that listening is the starting point, but it's not the end point. Once you hear someone's story, what's next? And we wanted to invite you to consider that there needs to be some action that follows listening, and that sometimes that isn't just on an individual level, but it's on a communal level too, a collective level. So some of it is on your faculty members to do. Some of it is on your administrators, like the president, to do. Some of it is on you all to do in your student organizations. So thinking about empathy as necessary but not sufficient. And Lisa, I know we don't have time, but I don't know what you would like to do next.
So I think first of all, let's give a round of applause.